Hello, this is Animation Complex, and I wanted to share some of my favorite Disney pins with you. If you're new here, my name is Jen, and I work in the animation industry in LA, and this channel is just my little slice of YouTube where I like to explore my own personal interest in animation. And for today's video, I just wanted to share a couple of my favorite pins from my Disney collection, so I hope you will humor me. Now, I'm a pretty easy target when it comes to animation merchandise. Basically, if it's anything about the actual production of animation, like how it's made, I want it, or if it has anything to do with animation history, I want it. So these particular pins are like my chef's kiss, like they were made for me kind of pins. Now, these first two pins I have feature Walt Disney Animation Studios Multiplane Camera. And the Multiplane Camera was an invention initially developed by German animator Lotte Reiniger, and if you've never heard of her, she is an absolute legend. You should look her up. But it was very different than the one that Disney Studios eventually developed. This particular multiplane was developed by Disney audio engineer and inventor William Garrity. And there were a couple different multiplane cameras that existed before this one even. Again, Lotte's was one of the first ones. Ub Iwerks, who was like a longtime Disney animator and director who left the studio for a period of time. He developed his own in 1933, and then the Fleischer brothers had not quite a multiplane, but like a very similar one that they developed in 1934. That one was called like the stereo optical camera. Again, not quite the same, but like very similar. So there were a lot of similar like inventions kind of happening. But this particular one, again, was created by Bill Garrity, and this one was like the most advanced one of all of them. And it had movable layers, which was something that hers didn't have. Ub's had that though. So again, a lot of like similar ideas kind of converging at the same time and probably, taking from each other and improving on each other as it goes. The multiplane camera for Walt Disney wasn't completed until 1937 though. So again, they were a bit further behind. So like I said, this camera filmed top down. It had movable layers and they could film up to 7 layers at a time. The beauty of this device was to allow for parallaxing. So by having the different layers, which were visible because, they were painted on either glass or cells, so they were like partially transparent, you could have them move at different speeds and depths, and you could create the illusion of depth using this, especially with having so many layers. The multiplane, it was first tested on the production of the 1937 Academy Award-winning Silly Symphony short, The Old Mill, before it was being used on Disney's first feature, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which also came out in 1937. The last film that used Disney's multiplane was The Little Mermaid, which came out in 1989, and that was, of course, after, it was right before the studio switched to a digital system. There's a lot more to say about the camera, but I'll save that for a future video. I actually don't know how many multiplanes there were at any, given time, at, peak multiplane-ness of Disney. I know there were several. There are 3 that still exist today. One of them is in Disneyland Paris. One of them is at the Disney Studios lot in Burbank, California. And one of them is in San Francisco at the Walt Disney Family Museum. I was very fortunate. I was able to go there a few years ago and see it in person. And it is breathtaking. It's massive. It's kind of weird because it's partly in the gift shop. I don't know. It's weird where they have it. But I get they kind of want to protect it. But you can kind of look at it, on multiple floors, and it's really cool. And if you love Disney history, animation history, and you're able to make the trip over there, I really recommend it. It's definitely worth a visit. That's a really beautiful museum. So for me, these are just so cute and I love them. And to be honest, that's where this one particular pin comes into play. So technically not an official Disney pin trading pin, just one of the pins you can get at the gift shop there. So it doesn't have the official, Disney pin trading stamp on the back. It does have the same little cute Mickey ear backings, but the back of it just says the Walt Disney Family Museum, Disney made in China, and it's time-stamped 2011. I still think, if you brought this to the parks and someone wanted to trade, people wouldn't not want it because, it's not official. So I really like this one. I don't know if they still have it. I know it's not listed on the online store, but they only have a certain amount of merchandise on the online store versus they sell a lot more exclusively physically in the store, unfortunately, if you can't get over there. The other one of the multiplane pins I do have is an official Disney pin trading pin. It's also from 2011, so I guess that was a big year for multiplane camera pins, which I don't know. Sure. I love this one though. It's a limited edition one, unfortunately. There were only 250 of them made. So you will probably have a hard time finding it. I actually got this one on eBay because I couldn't find it. And then there were another 110 of these that were released exclusively in Tokyo Disney because they were part of this 110-year anniversary collection, which at the time in 2011, 110 would have been how old Walt Disney was if he had been alive still, which is kind of like a weird thing to like make commemorative pins for, but that's fine. Yeah, so this one's like pretty hard to find now. And this one also, I have a note about it because it's like a little confusing because the pin has 1937 on it, but, you know, it has Pinocchio on it as a character. Pinocchio, you know, the film didn't come out until 1940, but the pin says 1937 because 1937, as I said before, was the year that the multiplane was first used on the Old Mill and Snow White. But they have Pinocchio on here, so I feel like people might think Pinocchio came out in 1937. Like, it's just a little bit like, I don't know. It's a little confusing if you like don't know everything about it. Yeah, because then the back also just says the Walt Disney Studios' first use of the multiplane camera, 1937. But Pinocchio's on it. Why? I mean, I'm glad because I already have a Snow White one, but like, it's just confusing. But I also like, now I have Pinocchio on a pin, so that's totally fine. And I will say, you know, thinking about it like right now, Pinocchio has one of the best uses of like the multiplane. It has like that really like legendary, you know, ongoing shot of like the, you know, the town of like the camera kind of flying through the town. So I totally get why they would use Pinocchio as like a highlight for the multiplane. But it kind of, I don't know, doesn't still make sense. And now the third pin that I have here kind of stems a little bit off of some of the detailing in this Snow White pin. Doc and Dopey are both holding some special paper. And animation paper is just like a type of paper that, I forget the dimensions, but the only thing about it that's really special is that it has holes punched into it specifically so that you can put it in an animation peg bar, which is what I have here. And you can animate with it and you can flip your drawings a lot easier. So this third pin that I have features, technically it's like animation paper. And this one's more recent. This one's actually from 2020. I got it right before the parks closed because of the pandemic. And it's part of the ink and paint collection, which was like kind of a weird collection that they had at the parks for a couple years that featured like, there were like dresses and purses and clothing, but then there was like homeware and like dishware and home decor. And then they just had like some cute art and they had some of these great pins. So yeah, this one is also official Disney pin trading, again, circa 2020. And this particular one was Peter Pan. They had a couple. They had like the penguins from Mary Poppins. I think they might have had Alice from Alice in Wonderland, but I don't quite remember. But I had to get Peter because I love Peter Pan. And I love this one too because it kind of has, you know, very basically a couple of the steps in the production. You know, so it's got sketching, cleanup, ink, and paint, and then a final little Peter. And it's also got, again, that same like pegboard stencil. So these three together are just like pins that make me happy, and like they just like highlight the history of the studio and like their history of developing new techniques and improving on other existing techniques and inventions. And it like speaks to that kind of industrious spirit that the company had back when it was first starting. So these are like highlights of my collection. I always display them when I go to the parks and stuff, and it's fun to talk to people about them who know, and of course I will never trade them. Like, they spark joy, so I wanted to share them with you. And yeah, that's it. If you like this video, you know, be sure to check me out at animationcomplex.com, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.